Just moments ago, the world received confirmation of what military analysts had been whispering about for months, quietly, cautiously, almost in disbelief. Something unprecedented has happened. Something that rewrites naval doctrine. Something that challenges decades of American military dominance. Something that sends shockwaves through the Pentagon, NATO headquarters, and every naval command center on the planet. For the first time in modern history, an irregular armed movement, fighters with no air force, no navy, no billion-dollar defense budget, has successfully neutralized an American aircraft carrier. Not in theory, not in a simulation, in real combat. Tonight we will explain how Yemeni Houthi forces became the first non-state military actor capable of disabling a U.S. supercarrier, why the Red Sea has quietly turned into a live testing ground for Russian, Chinese, and North Korean weapons, and why a seemingly routine Houthi delegation visit to Moscow triggered outright fury inside the Pentagon. This is not just a regional incident, this is a strategic earthquake. Part 1. What an American aircraft carrier really represents. Let us be absolutely clear about the scale of what is being discussed. An American aircraft carrier is not just a ship. It is a floating fortress, a sovereign military base, and a symbol of U.S. global dominance. The USS Abraham Lincoln, a nuclear-powered Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, costs more than $13 billion to build. It carries dozens of advanced fighter jets, including the F-35C. It is protected by layered missile defense systems, electronic warfare suites, radar arrays capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously, and an entire carrier strike group built to defend it at all costs. For decades, the assumption was simple and absolute. An American aircraft carrier cannot be taken out by non-state actors. And yet, this assumption no longer holds. Because this colossal war machine was forced out of combat by fighters the Western media once mocked as men in sandals. Part 2. What Washington is not saying officially. Washington has not explained why the USS Abraham Lincoln was suddenly sent to repair docks. There was no dramatic announcement, no emergency press conference, no admission of damage. But military journalists, naval analysts, and independent intelligence sources are telling a very different story. According to multiple reports, the damage was severe enough to remove the carrier from operational duty for months, possibly up to a year. And the central question is not whether the ship was hit. The real question is, what hit it? And more importantly, who made that possible? Part 3. The Red Sea. From trade artery to war zone. To understand why this matters, we must understand the Red Sea itself. The Red Sea is not just water. It is one of the most critical economic arteries on Earth. Through the Suez Canal passes around 12% of global trade. Oil tankers, container ships, military vessels, food supplies, industrial goods. For decades, this route allowed ships to avoid sailing around the entire African continent, saving weeks of time and billions of dollars. That era is now over. For more than a year, Yemeni Houthi forces have effectively controlled access to the Red Sea. American, British, and Israeli vessels are now forced to detour around Africa, dramatically increasing costs and delays. Insurance premiums for Red Sea voyages have skyrocketed, sometimes by tens of times. Many shipping companies simply refuse to enter the region at all. And here is the detail that should alarm Western policymakers the most. Russian and Chinese ships are not being attacked. They pass freely. This is not coincidence. This is strategy. Part 4. A failed American naval campaign. United States launched Operation Prosperity Guardian to restore freedom of navigation. It failed. Despite advanced warships, billion-dollar missile interceptors, and constant patrols, U.S. and British vessels continue to come under attack. Drones and missiles costing thousands of dollars force intercepts that cost millions. The U.S. Naval Institute Bulletin made a stunning admission. For the first time in history, the U.S. Navy is facing irregular forces with modern anti-ship weapons and real combat experience. This is not a minor setback. It is a doctrinal failure. The world's most powerful navy cannot defeat guerrilla forces operating from one of the poorest countries on Earth. So how is this possible? Part 5. The real backers behind the Houthis. The answer is simple and deeply uncomfortable for Washington. The Houthis are not alone. Behind them stand Russia, China, and North Korea, with Iran acting as a conduit. The Red Sea has become a proxy battlefield, a testing ground where advanced weapons are deployed, not directly by major powers, but through allied forces. This allows America's rivals to test weapons in real combat, study U.S. naval defenses, inflict damage without triggering direct war. Part 6. What damage was actually done according to independent sources? The hull of the USS Abraham Lincoln suffered penetrations. The flight deck was deformed and rendered unusable. 3 F-35C fighter jets were damaged by shrapnel. Multiple air defense systems were knocked offline. This was not a single lucky strike. It was a coordinated, multi-vector attack. Analysts believe the weapons used likely included Chinese C-801 anti-ship cruise missiles, Russian Yakont-class missiles, swarms of attack drones designed to overwhelm defenses. The probability that the Houthis developed such systems independently is 0. Part 7. Moscow. The visit that enraged the Pentagon on January 22nd, just 2 days after the carrier was forced to withdraw, a Houthi delegation arrived in Moscow. They met with Russian officials, including Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov. Officially, the talks were about diplomacy and economics. Unofficially, they discussed urgent military supplies, specifically hypersonic missiles, underwater drone systems, and this is where the situation turns truly explosive. Part 8. The hypersonic nightmare. Russia's Zircon hypersonic missile travels at Mach 9. It maneuvers unpredictably. It cannot be intercepted by existing naval defenses. A single hit can sink an aircraft carrier or destroyer. If even a small number of these missiles were transferred to Houthi forces, the U.S. Navy would be forced to abandon the Red Sea entirely. Because no admiral will risk a $13 billion carrier against a weapon with no defense. Part 9. Underwater warfare. The Poseidon factor. Even more alarming are discussions around underwater autonomous systems, often referred to as Poseidon-type drones. These systems operate silently, are extremely difficult to detect, can strike from below where ships are most vulnerable. In the murky waters of the Red Sea, defending against such weapons is nearly impossible. If deployed, the region would become a dead zone for Western navies. Part 10. Why Washington is trapped. The United States now faces a strategic trap. It cannot strike Russia, China, and North Korea directly without risking global war. Defeat the Houthis militarily while they receive external support. Withdraw without admitting defeat. Every option carries enormous cost. This is asymmetric warfare at its most effective. Part 11. The bigger picture. This is not just about Yemen, not just about the Red Sea, not just about one aircraft carrier. This is about a shift in global power. Irregular forces, armed and trained by major states, can now challenge the strongest military on Earth. The old rules no longer apply. Conclusion. A world entering a new era. All the facts align. A U.S. aircraft carrier forced out of combat, failed naval operations, free passage for Russian and Chinese shipping. Open discussions of hypersonic weapons transfers. Public anger inside NATO circles. The Red Sea is slipping out of Western control. And the question is no longer if this changes the global balance of power, but how fast. Final call to action, retention focused. What do you think? Is this the beginning of the end of U.S. naval dominance? Should Russia supply hypersonic weapons in response to Western actions? Can Washington recover control of the Red Sea? Or is this a permanent shift? Write your thoughts below, because what is happening now is not a headline. It is history unfolding in real time. And the next move may redefine the global order.